Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to Championship Leadership Podcast, and excited we're with Emi Kirschner here today. Check her out, podcast Tribe of Leaders. Got a Facebook group that you should also be a part of called the Tribe of Leaders as well, out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I'm excited. We're still in the COVID, I guess I'll call it the COVID crisis, the shutdown, the lockdown, the curve flattener, the social distancer. And so we are all still navigating that in these times, but appreciate you coming on. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be hanging out with you today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so let's just get right to it. The first question that I love to ask is Championship Leadership's the name of the podcast. What comes to mind for you when you hear Championship Leadership?
My favorite word, leadership.
Yeah.
Right? Like everything that I do revolves around creating stronger leaders from a CEO standpoint. And I think there's a lot of mirrors between being a true champion and a high performer and somebody who's, just moving forward with purpose and intention, and being a leader, running their business, creating amazingness and making impact too, like being able to help other people in whatever it is that they're doing, but serving.
Yeah. So, well, I agree. Number one. Number two, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and kind of how leadership has become such an important piece of who you are and what you do, and what you're up to today with your Tribe of Leaders podcast, Facebook group, and working with coaching executives and other leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. So I work with creative service-based entrepreneurs, and I help them break through into multi-six-figure businesses, because generally they're stuck in that overworked admin role where they're on the hamster wheel trying to juggle everything. And I help them implement systems with sales and marketing and then processes so that they can start delegating, grow teams, and really making the impact that they want and deserve to be making as well. And both the Facebook group and the podcast are just outlets for me to connect with my people. The Facebook group has been really fun because I get to see all these people being supportive of each other, and it's, there's a lot of networking going on, and then I do some trainings, etc. in there. And the podcast just started because I think leaders' stories are so fascinating, and not only in the triumph and in the champion aspect, but where were they struggling and what did they learn and how has that evolved their leadership and the way they're thinking about doing the next thing. So it keeps me out of trouble these days.
Which it's hard to do right now, is to get in trouble, I think, but it's still good to have those things to keep you out of it.
Right.
Who are some championship leaders or coaches, mentors that maybe have impacted your life? And what is it about them that really stands out as, characteristics that maybe even you've taken to help mold who you are as a leader?
Yeah. So I followed James Wedmore, and currently working with Andrew Cruzy. So from a business coaching perspective, I love their mindset and their ability to really serve their people and be caring and authentic. I think that's really crucial, particularly now where I think you're going to see more, or even more of a swing back into relationship marketing and relationship building as a way of growing your business. Danielle Laporte, I'm trying to think of the long list of people, they're authors that I've read different books. Tony Robbins, Rachel Hollis as of recent, and I can't think of the author. Jen Sincero. I love their stories and their different personalities, and they've all made a difference for me at different points in my life and my career, just because they've kind of been there as I've needed the next thing to kind of go and be like, oh, this is how I up level here and how I start to think differently. And I think that's really the biggest piece. Is it's not your knowledge base, it's really about how you're thinking, that what you can accomplish and where your limits are, that stops people.
Yeah, those are some great ones. And what is it that really got you to doing what you are doing today? How did you get here? You skimmed over that part earlier
Such
today.
a windy path.
Yeah. So let's get
So
into
not
that a little
here.
bit.
Yeah. So I'm going to go back to like 20 some odd years ago. Um, my son was just a year, and he's 21 now. So
Okay.
he had digestive issues, and we took him to the doctors and the specialists and everything else, and nobody had any answers. And I got really upset and frustrated because here I was this like super young new mom who like couldn't fix her kid and wasn't getting the guidance. And that started this whole path of me getting into food and healthy eating, which kind of led into the mindset stuff. So over the last 20 years, I've worked in a number of different industries. I started my catering business. I was a personal chef for a while, but I worked in financial services. I've done event planning, convention planning. And then I worked for a marketing agency that was really specialized in the aftermarket motorcycle industry, which I knew absolutely nothing about, but I was the project manager. So it was really fun to learn about that and start getting involved with digital ads and websites and all of the print materials that go with different things, and really closing those deals in a way that they weren't doing it before. Like they'd had all these projects open that nobody was finishing, and I just came in and boom, 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 boom. And it sounds like none of that is related, but I've had some of like the best sales lessons while catering.
Yeah.
How to connect with your client and everything else. So I actually started this business as a health coach, and because it's always been and still is a really important part of my life, where I believe that healthy eating is what's can keep you real, super healthy, from the standpoint of it can inform your genes and your DNA of turning different risk factors on and off, which I think is so powerful and cool. But what I soon learned in my coaching business as a health coach was that it really wasn't health coaching. And I woke up at one point, I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago, and it's like, if I have to write another blog article about the 5 things that I should eat right now, I'm like, I want to throw up.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just wasn't aligning with me. And I'm like, all right, well, this is a bad sign.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And I started looking around, and I actually did a process that I teach my clients now to do. Like I took an inventory of all my clients and what they'd hired me for and what I was really helping them with. And it was stress management, which is kind of how they came in from the standpoint of the health coaching. But what they were stressed out about as entrepreneurs, and everybody was an entrepreneur, what they were stressed out about was their businesses. They were exhausted, they were overworked, their employees weren't doing what they wanted, they didn't have enough sales, the marketing thing wasn't working, and I was actually solving those problems. So it became a very natural transition, and I get to utilize this, very random past of mine and all the things that I've learned to be able to truly help these people grow incredible businesses. So it's, yeah.
Yeah, no, I love it. I mean, yeah, I always like hearing the story of how you've gotten to where you are. And I, very similar to you, I think same for me, as I can look back and none of it maybe would make sense to why I'm doing what I am today. But then you kind of look back at all of the different things that you've had and experiences you've had, and they all they do start to fall into place and make sense to, how you've gotten to where you are, and how you've learned different things from different pieces of it. And yeah, I mean, just having that wide, I guess we'll say, variety of experiences, right? I mean, it's great when you're working, because now you're multifaceted, right? You got a lot of different tools in the tool belt to help all these different people from different industries. So yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, you're welcome.
What's what's the impact or the vision that you really want to make here in the near future with what you're doing and helping lead and guide others? I think championship leaders, they have great vision and also the courage to be able to take and make decisions based off of that vision. So I'm always interested to hear, what's the direction you want to go and impact you want to make?
Yeah. So I mean, I want to say like, I want to help as many people as possible, but I think
Yeah.
everybody does that, right?
Yeah.
And some of it is like, I committed to helping 1 million entrepreneurs several years ago, and I've been slowly getting there. So this year in particular has been really about ramping that up and making that difference. I'm launching a new 3-month program that's going to be pretty intense for entrepreneurs who are ready to play big. And it's a very, I want to say linear again, but just step by step by step, like do this and you'll grow, and taking them from how to create organic marketing and sell authentically to how do you team build, and start delegating things out and what do you need to do. So I'm super excited about that, because what I realized is the fewer people that I work with and really help them build and help them, help their people, the more impact I have and I can make. So I'm looking at, growing my community and just getting in the weeds with them, because that's where I thrive, and giving them the kind of little shift and then some of the knowledge base so that they can help shift their mindset too. I mean, that's, I think the biggest thing is people, you don't know what you don't know. And we're all kind of operating in a box until you get to the next level and the next level. And unless you're seeking that, things don't change. So that's kind of where I'm at short term. Long term, my goal is to set up a foundation here in Philly and create something that, one, will unify a lot of the nonprofits, because there's a ton of nonprofits in the city, who I think, and I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, but there's a lot of overlap in resources that aren't being utilized, and we're not then spending effectively or helping the people effectively. And right now, at least, Philly has a really high poverty rate. Our education system is terrible. Our roads suck. And it's an amazing city with all these incredible people and stories and history. And I feel like there's a lot of opportunity for us to be doing better. So that's the kind of the longer term goal. And that drives what I'm doing now, because my people will, even if they have nothing to do with the foundation, my people will impact, whether it's Philly or someplace else, because their mindset is aligned with being a champion.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
What's maybe a turning point in your life, like a critical moment where, and I know yeah, when I ask this, you usually get that response, right? Because we all have a lot and maybe probably multiple throughout every day, but is there a moment that really sticks out, kind of that fork in the road moment where,
I think the biggest one for me, particularly mindset wise, was when I was getting divorced, and it wasn't going great. And I was sick. Like, I had 4 sinus infections in like 5 months or something, and my kids were really young. I was in the process of starting up a catering, like a cafe for a catering company, and trying to work like 80 hours a week. My kids were an absolute wreck. And I just, things were not good. And I was sitting in this chair one night while my kids were watching Sesame Street or whatever. And I realized that I was waiting for somebody to save me. And as I say in a lot of my talks, had Prince Charming ridden by, I was busy blowing my nose from the sinus infection to have right? So I knew I had to just figure it out at that point. And I knew that what I was doing and how I was acting and who I was being wasn't going to cut it anymore. And I think the really big tie for me too was I didn't want my kids to see me be sick all the time and be unhappy and exhausted and a complete stress bag. I had made such a commitment to lead them when they were born, and to think about, here they are at 5 and 7, and you're really not leading, and your life is a mess. and it's really you can blame everybody else, but really it's you, and you have to be accountable for you. So that was the starting point for me in figuring it out and doing things differently and looking at how I can make different changes. And it's been a process. Like, I'd love to say, oh, the next year I had it all together, and that's not the case.
No.
So,
Yeah.
but it has informed a lot of the decisions that I've made and what I've wanted for my kids and who they are. And while it was probably one of the most difficult time periods, I'm so grateful for that whole experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe that. And, and so, you start by leading yourself and your family, and then that can lead into, how you are currently leading and helping others as well. So, where did the podcast come about for you? I know you said you mentioned that it's been fairly recently, but tell us a little bit more about that and when that started, and why did you start the podcast?
I started because I thought it would be fun.
Yeah. Is it?
Really? Well, I love the interviewing part. I might have thought twice if I knew about all the editing and the stuff, which isn't bad. It's just not my forte.
Well, I got somebody for you if you ever need some help in that area.
I don't do any of the editing, so
I don't enjoy that either.
No, and there would be no podcast if I did. But it started because one of my coaches was like, this is the next big thing.
Yeah.
And he was pushing like everybody in our circle at that point to take on things that made you uncomfortable. And while I had been on a number of podcasts before, and I loved the interview part, the idea of actually starting and then maintaining it made me feel uncomfortable because I didn't know how to do it. So I started it, and I was listening to podcasts all the time, and I love this, as I said, stories of, what has made people successful and their backstories and what they've learned and how they've evolved. And everybody is different, which is, so cool.
Yeah.
So that's really what the catalyst was I was like, oh, all right, uncomfortable, and I can make this thing fun.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
And when did it start?
A year ago, February. So
okay. Yeah.
Like
I think a year in the podcast world is probably like a decade. So that's you feel pretty good about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's changed a little bit.
Yeah.
We're about to make a few more shifts and from a format standpoint, but it's growing and evolving. And it is, I'm going to say, one of the areas that I'm constantly thinking about, like, how can I do this better?
Yeah.
Right. Like, how can I create a better story, ask better questions, have something that serves people and gives more value and is helpful to people that are listening. So the feedback's been pretty good, which is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're ever trying to think of other things that would make you uncomfortable, you could always come around 100 miles with me someday.
I ran Broad Street in Philly, which is a 10-mile run, I think 6 years ago. And
that's awesome.
It was great, but busted my knee.
Oh,
the
no
only
way.
thing I cannot do is run. So,
how did you bust your knee?
Philly streets are terrible. And there was a gigantic pothole as I was coming in down Broad Street. And Broad Street, for those of you who haven't been in Philly, is like one of the main drags. And it starts from North Philly. It's 10 miles, probably a little bit longer. But it wraps around City Hall. So you start from North Philly and run down to the Navy Yard.
Okay.
And it's like this huge, incredible run that people vie to get a space for.
Yeah.
And I was kind of in the zone. We were right in mile 5, and this huge pothole, and the woman that I was running next to, I don't know who she was, but we both landed in this pothole. I mean, we didn't fall, but it was like just jarring.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, pain, not bad, but I kept running anyways. And then in about mile like 6.5 to 7, I'm like, this is really bad. And I was so mad. I was like, I have been training for this. I finish. So I did. Anyway.
That's good. Awesome. Good for you. Yeah.
There's pictures of me like coming through the finish line, and there's like no pleasure or joy whatsoever. Like, it hurt. But it's all soft tissue.
You just had a bad experience.
Yeah. So it just never healed quite right.
Oh, really? That's too bad.
But I could do everything but run.
Okay.
So,
Good.
Yeah. No.
Awesome. Well, as we start to wrap up here, what would be one or two things that you could leave with the listeners if, you know, if they were to implement today, would actually help them move forward today? What would those be?
Oh God, that's a long list.
I know, right? Well, that's why I say one or two.
Yeah, I would say be really clear about what you want in life. Like look at that long-term vision, look at the short-term vision, get really clear about what your core values are and start making decisions based on those three things. What's going to get you to where you want to be in 10 years? What's going to get you to where you want to be in a year and tomorrow? And then identifying like what's truly important for you and make decisions and say no to things, a lot of things,
Yeah.
based on
It's a big
that.
one, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably the hardest thing for anyone to do is say no, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I really, like, I try to teach my clients, like, if it's not driving a result in your business or your personal life and those established goals, then you have to say no.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, totally. That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. What are some ways that we can follow you and find out more about you for the listeners that are tuning in?
I would love to invite everybody to the Tribe of Leaders Facebook group.
Okay.
We're having a ton of fun over there. And as I said, there's a lot of different trainings and interviews and just great information and incredible people to connect with.
Okay. Perfect.
And listen to the
We'll
podcast.
make sure and the podcast, of course, especially the one with Nate Bailey that's coming out soon, I think, if she decides to publish it. I don't know. So definitely tune into those and check out the site. We'll get those all linked up, of course, too. So I appreciate you being here so much, Emi. And just thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. I'm truly grateful.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a good day.
You too.